the hippie movement and all of that, it was like, it was all based around sex, So, I think that was very detrimental to me. I had a hard time, when I got married, I had a hard time sustaining my marriage because I wasn't normal, by any means. So the only thing that's made me normal is I've become a Christian. And the way that came about was I gradually wanted to get out of the band because, and so did, the other guys were very unhappy too. We felt like our manager was shortchanging us. And I never was sure whether he was or not, but we weren't making the money that we should have been with the amount of records and personal appearances. We finally took him to court and got our personal appearance money, because before he had just been paying us a salary. We never got beyond the salary. He said, "You guys owe me this much money, so I'm going to keep taking money out of what you make until you get out of debt." We never got out of debt. So anyway, the organ player and I, John, paid him $2,000 to let us out of the contract. That supposedly paid our debt. And he and I decided to leave the band. So in '69, we came out to California. I was driving a Lotus Europa, which is a sports car about this high from the ground, with an engine in the back, and it would do 120 easy, man. It was a nice car. That's where I spent most of the money I made. But we came out to California, and we were going to be a duo. And we got a bunch of front money from Broadcast Music Incorporated because we were well-known songwriters, and they gave us a few $1,000s of front money. But within a few months, we weren't. LA's a whole different scene, and it's way harder to make it than what we realized. Looking back on it, just to get our songs played with the 5 Americans is pretty much a miracle. It's really hard to get on the radio, And when we got to LA, we were way more competition, So we weren't making it, and then John went with The Ventures, which is an instrumental group, Walk, Don't Run, some of those big songs back then before the Beatles came out. He went with them because they were real big in Japan. He became their keyboard guy. Left me hanging. I was left without. So here, 6 months before, I'd been a rock star in Dallas, and now I had to go get a job as a doorman in a nightclub. And I lost my Lotus. I started driving a 57 Volvo. So, think about it. What a come down, And plus, I was stoned all the time, and so I was really depressed. And, but I was still determined to make it, man. I was working hard, trying to get my songs out and everything. But finally, one night, in life, sometimes there's big things that happen that really change your course of life, like when we left the band, when we went from college to Dallas, these oaky guys who didn't know anything, and we became a big rock and roll band. And then the band split up. I ended up in LA. That's another big thing I did. So it's like life is a series of, you're just going along and then something big happens. And so this big happened this one night. I got out of the nightclub and I went down to Hollywood. I was in Pasadena in a nightclub working as a doorman. And these guys have been threatening my life because I had to check their IDs. And I wouldn't let them in because the owner said he would get closed if they found out that I'd let somebody in underage. So I started carrying a blackjack. So I went down and I was stoned and I couldn't find my way around. And I made an illegal U-turn looking for this house. And these cops pulled me over, Hollywood police. They came over there and, I said, "What's wrong, officers?" He said, "You know what's wrong. You made an illegal U-turn." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, They went and checked my car and the blackjack's laying on the front seat. And carrying it's a felony. I didn't know that. So I went to the Hollywood jail with handcuffs. And I spent the night in the Hollywood jail, and that scared me, man. There was some crazy people in that place. Prostitutes, pimps, guys wearing big hats with feathers, and girls with tattoos around their eyes and real short shorts that had been arrested. And you know, they brought in this one guy. He was on some kind of drug. He was just a great big guy. He was just screaming at the top of his lungs all night long. So when I got out of there and I went to court, I got it reduced to a misdemeanor, and then I split. I went up. I had a friend of mine up at Carmel, which is a beautiful place up by Monterey, up on the coast of California. I went up there and stayed with him. And it was perfect because he was a drug dealer, and I had all the drugs I could use. And so I was working just. He was a furniture salesman, so I was working in the furniture store, getting cash on the table, moving furniture, you know. Anyway, so then I met this girl there in a nightclub, and she was beautiful, and we got married. And I should have never got married. I was not marriage material, you know. And I was still playing in nightclubs, and we lasted about 1 year and 9 months. We had a child, and so we got a divorce. And by then we'd moved down to Ventura, which is down about 70 miles from LA on the coast. Pretty or nice place. And I was playing in nightclubs there. There was this one nightclub I played at called John's at the Beach. It was really, I was the biggest entertainer in that area, you know. But I still couldn't get, you know, records out. I was recording and stuff, but I still couldn't get them out. Anyway, one night, this was in 75, so this had been 6 years since I left the Five Americans. January of 75, I was in a nightclub in Ventura, and it was an off night. I wasn't playing, and I was up at the bar, and the place was packed with all kinds of characters from that era. Hippies with hippie beads, girls with long dresses, you know, hippie girls, and then there would be drug dealers in there. There was black people. There was, you know, just a big mishmash of people, and it was packed out. And also it was a biker hangout. There was a lot of bikers in there. So I'm up at the bar, and I'm leaning on. I always had the same pose when I was out drinking. I'd stand up at the bar with my boot heel hooked over. I always wore the same pants. I mean, not the same pants, but I had not too many pants. I had jeans, a jean shirt, and a jean jacket, and that's all I ever wore, and some old boots, cowboy boots. Anyway, I was drinking straight out of the pitcher. I wouldn't drink out of a glass. I'd just drink straight out of the pitcher, so you get drunk faster, you know. And plus, I'd been smoking dope all day, so I had just become totally living in this vacuum, you know. Playing in these nightclubs, making enough to pay my child support, and my alimony, and, you know, I had a rented room with a mattress on the floor. And so there I was up at the bar, you know, and all of a sudden, these bikers came in, you know, a bunch of bikers, and I was pretty friends with some of the bikers, you know. I don't think these guys were Hell's Angels, but, you know, there was a lot of crazy bikers back then. Anyway, and not too long after that, this blonde girl comes in with a guy, and she was real pretty. And right away, I just went over there and grabbed her, you know. And the guy didn't even fight me. I mean, he didn't even put up an argument. And I thought that was kind of strange, but I didn't care, you know. So I started dancing with her and stuff, and I asked her if she wanted to go to a party, and she says, yeah. And she looked like the girl next door. I mean, she was just, she didn't even look like a hippie even. So we went down to this party, and we partied till about 3 in the morning. Then we went over to my rented room, and we had sex on the mattress I had on the floor. All I owned at that time was a 13-inch color TV, a guitar, and a few changes of clothes, and that mattress on the floor. And that was it. So I was in this rented room that I rented from a friend of mine, and after we got through, we were laying there, and I was kind of relaxed, and the light was coming from the street, and it was kind of shining on the bed, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her neck turned at 90 degrees to an impossible angle to her body. Not like The Exorcist where it went all the way around, but, you know, like real, you know, like, I said, well, what's wrong with you? She goes, he's trying to get me. And I said, who? She goes, Lucifer. I said, bull, I don't believe any of that stuff. You know, that's a bunch of bull. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the devil or